will be discussing the Père Lachaise Cemetery in the 19th century. These are some of the topics we'll cover, and I'll be discussing the marketing campaign of the 19th century. Père Lachaise Cemetery is located in Paris, and it is the largest cemetery. It is known for its beautiful sculptures, and it is known to be an open-air museum. It has also been an attraction site for about 2 centuries now. It is named after King Louis' confessor, Père Lachaise. However, his followers wanted this land to become a dedication to him and celebrate his life, so they made it into a beautiful park with to become a place of attraction where people could admire the beautiful gardens and promenade. However, after the French Revolution, there was a lot of safety concerns considering overcrowding in the cemeteries and burial sites. This was because after the French Revolution, many individuals died, and the city was overcrowded with burial sites and cemetery graves. So because of this, there was a lot of release of horrible stenches in the city, and which also led to a concern of spread of disease. Because of these reasons, the park was then transformed into a cemetery. The plan for making the cemetery was a failure because the cemetery is located on the outskirts of Paris, and during this time, in the outskirts of Paris is where the lower caste members lived. And many people from the city did not want their loved ones to be buried in an area where lower caste members lived, so because of these reasons, it was a failure. So they needed to find a plan of action to promote this cemetery, and one plan that they came up with is to bury celebrities from the 19th century there to gain attention. One example would be the lovebirds. Heloise and Abelard were buried in the Père Lachaise. Abelard was a scholar and a tutor for Heloise during this time, and they started developing feelings and started having an affair. Fulbert was the uncle of Heloise, and Heloise and Albert, their relationship got serious, and Heloise got pregnant. They secretly got married, and Fulbert, the uncle of Heloise, did not know, and he found out, and he was very mad and felt betrayal from Albert because he trusted him, and sent his niece Heloise to his sister's house, so where she gave birth and lived her life. And one night, to get revenge, he castrated Albert in the middle of the night. Because of these reasons, both Heloise and Albert became monk and nun and decided to live their life religiously. However, both of them their graves are together, and they were buried together to celebrate their tragic love story. And it was a place where people would go, and it was a place where many romantic people would celebrate their love life together. And lastly, Molière. Jean-Baptiste Poquelin was one of the best writers in France. Molière was a king of theater in France. He worked on comedy. He worked on comedy. He was an actor and a playwright, and was buried in a common grave, but then moved to Père Lachaise. However, we don't know if it's actually his actual grave or not. We don't know. Maybe his ashes are there, but it is controversial. Maybe they did that just because they wanted to attract people to bury their loved ones there. Here are my sources.
In the mid-19th century, Père Lachaise transformed from a practical burial ground to an emotionally charged landscape shaped by the values of romanticism, middle-class identity, and a new culture of mourning. The Romantic movement of the early 19th century, which emphasized emotion, imagination, and the individual, redefined how people approached death. Tombs at Père Lachaise became poetic and artistic statements. Families commissioned grave markers that reflected love, loss, and memory. And as historian Thomas Lacaire notes, romantic cemeteries like Père Lachaise made the dead visible in new ways. Graves weren't just markers of absence, they became stages for emotional storytelling. The shift was especially embraced by the urban bourgeoisie, which was the rising middle class of the 19th century. In Paris, they saw the cemetery as an opportunity to express their values, which were family, virtue, permanence, and refinement. Tombs became more ornate and personalized with statues, inscriptions, and detailed iconography, with the average inscription taking up to 11 days of work. Take the use of tomb symbolism, for example. A weeping willow symbolized grief and mourning, a broken column marked a life cut short, and angels symbolized hope, spirituality, or the soul's ascent. The use of this symbolic vocabulary allowed the living to convey the inner life of the deceased, even to strangers, so it became a language of remembrance, and it was accessible to all. But this wasn't just about art or mourning. It marked a deeper cultural change. Death became sentimentalized, social, and public. Families no longer simply buried their loved ones and moved on. They visited them. Visiting Père Lachaise became a ritual, even a leisure activity. People strolled through its tree-lined paths on Sundays, reading inscriptions, admiring sculptures, and reflecting. Death was no longer hidden away, and it became a part of public life, something moral, reflective, and even beautiful. This emerging culture of death closely paralleled the broader transformation of Paris under Baron Haussmann in the mid-19th century. Père Lachaise was structured, landscaped, and carefully planned. It was a city of the dead that mirrored the city of the living in its organization and design, which you can see in the little map there. And the layout encouraged movement, contemplation, and public display, turning mourning into a visual, urban, and physical experience. Père Lachaise in the mid-19th century was a reflection of its time. Romantic ideals, middle-class values, symbolic language, and urban modernization came together to make it a powerful cultural landscape. Here, death became personal, visible, and meaningful, and in doing so, shaped the way Parisians lived with memory. This is just a quote from a historian that summed up what the cemetery meant in that time.
Hi everyone, I am Xiao Tang, and today I'm going to talk about aesthetic legacy um, of the Père Lachaise Cemetery in aspects of architecture and design. Père Lachaise Cemetery spanned over 200 years and is a chronicle display of artistic trend that has diverse architectural styles in it. Zero-pointed arches, spires, and delicate stonework feature Gothic styles. Neoclassical style was also found in the mausoleums and the symmetric feature of the design in main entrance. Monuments features Egyptian revival containing pillars, obelisks, and wing-sun discs were also found there. More modernist featured building has simpler and more abstract forms. Laser etched portraits was also included later on. Unnamed alleys and avenues paved with cobblestones interconnected the cemetery. Such network resembles the modern city's planning. The principal entrance featured a curved driveway leading to the central gates, each adorned with the sculpted medallions, which was carved very delicately and has like traditional funeral symbols on it, including torch that shows the enduring flame of life, and hourglass shows the transience of the time. Altogether, they represent the celebration and the victory over the death. Impressive ironwork that symbolized industrial wealth was also found in the doors and the fence of the cemetery. They have the fleur-de-lis motifs and the scrollworks and other decorative patterns on it to show the distinguishable status of the period than the other cemeteries. It is populous because not only because it's beautiful, but also because it's representational in culture. It has many famous residents resting there, including Oscar Wilde, George Bazet, and Jim Romarazin, the famed writer Khaled, and many other celebrities not mentioned here. The right photo shows Oscar Wilde's kiss-covered tomb that is covered by kisses of red lipsticks to show the devotion to Oscar Wilde, who died in exile in Paris. It was so popular that the French government installed the glass barrier to protect it. The left photo is a Jim Morrison's tomb characterized by drinks, parties, and attributes poems to celebrate the rock and roll spirit of him. In conclusion, the cemetery surpassed its meaning and functionality to become a social, historical, and cultural place for people to spend their time there. And here are my sources.
Politics of the Dead, the Paris Commune, and Revolutionary Memory of the 1870s. The Paris Commune was in 1871, and it was a popular uprising in Paris against the French government during the Franco-Prussian War. This lasted 3 months before being crushed by conservative forces. Exile of the Communards. 4,000 political exiles were sent to New Caledonia, including Louise Michel, who advocated for indigenous rights. Impact on Paris. After the Commune, Paris was left in ruins, which became a tourist attraction and a subject of photography, as shown on the right. Bloody Week. On May 23rd of 1871, the Third Republic Versailles troops overran most of Paris. Bloody Week was intense slaughter of Communard soldiers, clergy, and civilians. There were 300 plus suspected Communards massacred inside the Church of Saint Marie Madeleine. There was a lot of widespread violence, which included shooting and killing, and this occurred day and night without clear cause. National Guard looted and burned government buildings, and iconic structures were destroyed throughout this week. Communards Wall and the Père Lachaise Cemetery. On May 27th of 1871, hundreds of Communards took refuge in the Père Lachaise Cemetery. Versailles troops blasted open the gates with a cannon and battled Communards among the graves. That evening, the surviving Communards were lined up against the cemetery wall and were executed by a firing squad. Prisoners from Mazas prison were also brought and executed and buried at the same site. The wall became known as Mur de Fédérés, or the Communards Wall, and is a symbol of revolutionary sacrifice. And this wall is shown on the right here. The aftermath of the Paris Commune. Large sections of Paris were reduced to rubble during Bloody Week, which lasted from May 21st to the 28th of 1871. 43,000 Parisians were arrested, and many were soon released after. Some leaders escaped abroad, while others were exiled to New Caledonia. A few leaders were executed for their role in the uprising, and it's estimated around 10,000 were killed, mostly during Bloody Week, and as many as 20,000 deaths were total. Many participants were eventually granted amnesty. Legacy of the Paris Commune. The Paris Commune remains a topic of debate among historians, politicians, and citizens. In May of 2021, the 150th anniversary of the Commune's end, a Martyrs' March was honoring the Catholic clergy killed during Bloody Week and was attacked by anti-fascist protesters, resulting in injuries and had an early end to the march. Many buildings since were destroyed or damaged during the Commune's downfall, and they've now been rebuilt. And here